Okay, so we have this ready to use and turn our 2D drawing, our tracing of our half of our shape, into a 3D by using a lathe tool, which is basically going to spin this around. Let's do it, and then we'll go through it and troubleshoot a few different things that could happen when this happens. So I'm just going to go into my modifier list. I'm already in the modify pan. So I'm going to pull this down, and I'm going to grab my lathe tool, and we'll see how it looks in mine. So alphabetical here is lathe. It's 360 degrees, at least by default when I open this up. If I cut this in half, you'll see what it's doing. It's kind of like one of those paper party decorations that you unroll and you spin it all the way around. Here's 23 degrees. As I get more, this would be 90, 180, and then we go all the way around. We want it to be 360 to grab the bottom. Okay, if I rotate, you'll see as once again, as I get this complete around, we seal it and we're done here. Weld core, okay, we don't need to turn that on for what we're doing because we're going to be opening that up anyway. And flip nominals, I want to show you what that looks like. Let's see, we did this on top view, right? So flip nominals, that reverses what is in our scene. You also have some directionality of the way it runs. This would be X, this would be Y. We want Y selected or Z, and it kind of changes where the rotation point is. If I'm rotating around the center here, or what. So, and here is also max would make it wider from the widest point. It's going to we want it from center here. So actually, so that messed it up. So I'm going to do Control Z, but here's what I want to show you. So if that happens, just do Control Z to get it back. Let's re-add the lathe tool. Okay, and I'm going to show you another reason why it might happen like that. So here it's welded around. Okay. And what it's doing is when I turn that off or I click back on the line tool, it's rotating it around the center. It's calling this last line that I manipulate my center line. So if I go and grab, okay, I'm in segments here. I grab this segment. Let me zoom in. And I move this around a little bit or I adjust that in my scene last. And let's say I decide this is my center. Okay. And I turn on my lathe tool, it recognizes it. Now, this isn't that wide. I may want to make this a little wider. Okay, so how do I do that? I go back into my line tool and double click on here, grab this. That doesn't like it. I have to turn on segment here. Let me grab segment, adjust my line, make this a little wider. I can grab this vertice down here, make this a little bit more so it looks like it's halfway. Okay, and maybe the whole thing could be adjusted over, and I'll slide the whole shape over a little bit. Okay, and grab this last line. So now when I turn on my lathe tool, let's look at it. Okay, still a little skinny. So here's what may happen. I want to troubleshoot this with you. I clicked on plane. This is what happens frequently when we're doing this, and students are like, well, I want to make this a little thicker, so they grab these lines over here, and they're like, I'm going to move these splines here out a little bit, add some thickness. Okay, perfect. Now watch what happens when I turn my lathe tool back on. Let's say I'll delete the one that's there, but and we'll just go delete, and I'll redraw it and find it in the lathe tool. So I reapply my modifier, and what happens? It's not finding it. It looks all wrong. It looks wonky. So how do I fix it? What is happening when that happens? Let's go back to I'm going to delete this layer because it's corrupted. what it's finding is that the last spline here, the last segment that I moved, which was this one, it's saying, oh, that must be my primary. So it's going to rotate everything in my drawing around this line, which is not my center line. Okay, this is the center line of my object. So if I do need to modify any of these, let's say I modify these, I slide them over a bit, then I have to make sure before I turn on my lathe tool that I go back to this spline, my main center line, and I have that as the last thing that I've selected or modified. Now, when I go into my list and I add the lathe tool back on, okay, right here, now it will model around that. And I did make it a little thicker by having it on that point. Let's see how, if I turn this line back on, it almost looks a little too thick now. So feel free to adjust it when you go back and forth. Okay. You can double click. I'm going to just get rid of my old lathe layer. I want it to redo it. But when I reset this line here and I change my vertice, which is now it's underneath. So let's just hide that. That set my thickness from here to here. So I move that over. So here's how you fine tune it. Re-add your modifier. You almost have to delete and add from scratch. Now that looks a lot more closer to my drawing. It's not going to be perfect because this was a skewed drawing to begin with. But now I turn on my spline and there we go. All right, we're going to call that a wrap for this part. We're going to come back in and one last one and draw the base here so that we're ready to export this, save it all as one big group. And so things are looking good. Hopefully you learned something, and we are looking forward to seeing you in our final wrap-up. Thanks, and keep on drawing.